What is barred from copyrightability? Let's talk about some basics. So, starting from the top, the Copyright Act provides what is generally copyrightable in 102A, original works of authorship fixed in any tangible medium of expression. But in the same provision, 102B, it sets forth what cannot be copyrighted, sometimes called the 102B bar. Let's look at the 102B bar. So here it is again. It says that copyright cannot exist to ideas, procedures, process, systems, methods, concept, principles, or discoveries. What do these have in common? One way to think about it is that these are fundamental building blocks that everyone needs. In other words, a goal of these bars from protection is to ensure a robust public domain, i.e., an area of uncopyrightable material. Why? Because that would enable everyone to use these things, which is actually necessary to create more copyrightable material. So, an important issue is that although an idea alone is not copyrightable, how you express the idea or method or system could be copyrightable. This was discussed in the famous case Baker v. Selden, where the court said the form, the blank form itself, i.e., a form for doing a method, was not copyrightable, but the book explaining how to use the form was copyrightable. Why? Because there are multiple ways you could have written those words and explained how to do that. So the whole book, including the form, is copyrightable, but just that form is not. In other words, other people could copy that form and do that process, but they cannot literally copy the whole book. Now, the CFR also lists out some examples of what is not copyrightable. One thing that's sometimes surprising to people is that a short phrase like "show me the money" is not copyrightable. You may be wondering why. This is a little bit different maybe from building blocks, although it's sort of similar in that there isn't a lot there. You could say it's not very expressive. So maybe this could be protected by trademark, but not by copyright. Other things that are not protectable are things like just ingredients, just a list, because that would be a method, or a blank form, as we talked about. That would be a method for doing things, but not really expression, or a blank check, or even something standard, like a height weight chart or a tape measure. But as we've already talked about, it may seem like there is not a super clear line between what's barred versus what's protected. So let's look at some examples. So we've said blank forms, like a check, list of ingredients, are not copyrighted. So is facts, or are facts. Facts are kind of like ideas not subject to protection. But how you explain facts could be. So, for example, there's all these newspaper articles about the same story, and yet each article is copyrightable. You may be wondering why. Well, if you think about it, each author of those articles are explaining the basic facts in a different way, using different words, different expressions, so each is copyrightable. Similarly, although a blank bank check is not copyrightable, the one with the cartoonish chicken is copyrightable. I don't know if you can see it, but down at the bottom it says licensed by Suzy Zhu. Presumably that's the owner of the cartoon. So to be clear, we're not saying that the owner of Suzy Zhu is able to prevent other people from writing checks. It's just that there's copyright protection for this character on the check. Similarly, although the list of ingredients is not copyrightable, Recipe books, or even perhaps a page like this, could be. Now, you should see that here you have not only a list, but there are directions, which are kind of like a book, in that there is some selection arrangement of what words you use to describe in what order. There is also an image that is chosen, and also additional graphics here. Now, I'm not saying that this is highly expressive, but there is something more than just a list. Now let's talk about other bars. If there's only one or a limited way to express an idea, the idea and expression merge such that there is no protection. Or stock characters that are very common are not protectable. Similarly, basic shapes are not protectable, not enough there, kind of like words or short phrases, not enough expression. Now, there's a couple other things a little bit different. Any work created by the US government, US government officials, is not protectable, mostly because it says so in the Copyright Act. Recently, the US Supreme Court also said that state law annotations to statutes are not copyrightable. And there is a more complicated bar for some kinds of pictorial, graphical, or sculptural work that are useful in a case involving cheerleading uniforms. It's a little more complicated beyond the scope, but what you should see in common is that generally there are some bars to copyright protection to make sure copyright doesn't actually serve as a barrier to creating more expression. Hopefully that helps to give you a little bit of an overview.